Right now, there's a 29-year-old man deleting his dating apps for the third time this year. Not because he found someone, because he's done. He just spent 6 months sending 200 messages, got 11 matches, 3 conversations that went nowhere, and 1 date where she spent the entire dinner on her phone, then ghosted him. He's not angry anymore. He's just tired, and he's not alone. There are 23 million single men in America who've made the same calculation he just did. The math doesn't work. So they're walking away. We're witnessing something that's never happened before in human history. Millions of single men are vanishing from the dating market, from social spaces, from places where men and women used to meet naturally. They're not dying. They're not in relationships. They're just gone. And here's the part that'll make you uncomfortable. Modern female dating behavior created this, not intentionally, not maliciously. But the patterns that emerged over the last 15 years have made being a single man so unrewarding that millions have decided it's not worth trying. Let me show you what's really happening, because the numbers reveal something everyone sees but nobody wants to say out loud. 63% of men under 30 are now single, not dating, not in relationships, single. Compare that to women under 30, where only 34% are single. The math doesn't add up until you realize what's actually going on. The majority of women are dating a minority of men. Multiple women rotating through the same small pool of guys, while the rest get nothing. This isn't theory. This is data. On every dating platform, the pattern is identical. The top 5% of men receive 50% of all female attention. The bottom 50% of men receive less than 4% combined. Your brain does this calculation whether you want it to or not. And for millions of single men, the calculation says the same thing. You're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. Stop trying. But here's where it gets dark. This distribution isn't natural. It's artificially created by technology and female choice operating without any constraints. For 200,000 years of human evolution, women had to choose from the men in their immediate environment, maybe 50 to 200 options maximum. Hypergamy existed, but it was limited by geography. You picked the best man available in your tribe, your village, your town. Today, a woman in Ohio can swipe through 10,000 men before breakfast. Her biology still tells her to select the top option. But now the top option isn't the best guy in her zip code. It's the best guy she can access digitally, which means the top 20% nationally. Watch what this does to single men psychologically. A completely average guy, decent job, decent shape, decent personality would have been a solid option in 1995. In 2026, he's invisible, not because he got worse, because the comparison pool got infinite. He's being compared not to the guys at the local bar, but to every attractive man within a 50-mile radius. And he loses that comparison every single time. So he stops showing up. And many women wonder where all the good men went. The truth nobody wants to hear is that the dating market collapsed when individual optimization created systemic failure. Every woman individually making rational decisions, collectively creating a nightmare. It's the tragedy of the commons applied to relationships. Let me break down exactly how this happens, because understanding the mechanism is crucial. A woman downloads a dating app. Within 6 hours, she has 200 likes. Her brain interprets this as abundant options. She becomes more selective. Why settle for a 7 when you have 50 8s and 9s in your inbox? She starts filtering aggressively. 6 feet tall minimum, 6-figure income, visible abs, college degree, no kids. Emotionally available but not needy. Funny but not goofy. Confident but not arrogant. The list expands because she believes she has the leverage to demand it. And in the short term, she does. She can get dates with high-value men. 1 date, maybe 2. Sometimes she'll sleep with them. They'll vanish afterward because they have 50 other options identical to her. But her brain doesn't interpret this as failure. It interprets it as proof she can access that tier of men. So her standards stay inflated. Meanwhile, the average single men who would actually commit to her never get past her filter. She rejects 95% of her matches without ever talking to them. They weren't tall enough. Their photos weren't good enough. Their bio didn't spark her. Now multiply this pattern across 40 million women and you see the catastrophe. The average single man sends 100 messages to get 5 responses. He gets 1 date every 4 months if he's lucky. The girl shows up, clearly disappointed he doesn't look like her top matches, spends the date half engaged, tells him she didn't feel a spark. He tries again. Same result. After 2 years of this, he's spent thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours, and massive emotional energy for a 0% success rate. His brain does what any brain does when effort produces no reward. It shuts down. But here's where the pattern gets even more direct. It's not just selection standards. It's behavior patterns that make relationships impossible even when single men do get access. I've watched this cycle destroy countless men. The woman finally gives a regular guy a chance. He's thrilled, he invests completely, texts her every day, makes plans, shows enthusiasm, tries to build something real. And the moment he shows that level of investment, she loses attraction. She starts the tests. She becomes distant to see if he'll chase. She creates drama to see if he'll tolerate it. She mentions other guys to see if he'll get jealous. She pulls back to see if he'll panic. Every test is designed to see if his frame is solid. And the brutal truth is, most single men fail these tests because they're too desperate for the relationship to work. They can't afford to lose it. She senses that desperation, and the attraction dies completely. Then she leaves and tells her friends he was too clingy. What's actually happening is many women are selecting for emotional unavailability and then complaining that men are emotionally unavailable. They reward the guys who don't care and punish the guys who do. Single men see this pattern play out repeatedly, and they learn the lesson. Caring makes you lose, so they stop caring, or they stop participating entirely. Either way, the relationship market collapses, and the confusion about why good men are impossible to find becomes universal. The part that really exposes how this crisis developed is what happens with social media and validation. The average woman with 1,000 Instagram followers receives more daily validation than her great-grandmother received in her entire life. Every photo generates dozens of likes. Her brain becomes addicted to dopamine hits that simulate social value without requiring actual relationships. A single man offers her commitment and exclusivity. Instagram offers her 300 likes in 4 hours. The easier reward wins. She posts thirst traps while telling him she's too tired for sex. She responds to DMs from other guys, but leaves his messages on read for 6 hours. The single man realizes he's competing not with other men, but with the validation algorithm itself. And he can't win that competition. He can't give her 500 likes per day, so she keeps him around for security and resources while seeking validation everywhere else. And when he confronts her about it, she calls him insecure and controlling. Now layer in one more element that compounds the problem: the complete destruction of male spaces and male identity. Every traditionally masculine trait has been pathologized. Competitiveness is toxic. Stoicism is emotional unavailability. Self-reliance is refusing to be vulnerable. Physical strength is performing toxic masculinity. The cultural message became clear. Men should become more emotionally expressive, vulnerable, sensitive, communicative, and men tried. An entire generation of single men learned to open up, to share feelings, to be emotionally available. And you know what happened? Attraction died immediately. The stated preference was sensitivity. What actually generated attraction was strength. The single men who followed the advice got friend-zoned. The men who ignored it got results. The contradiction broke millions of guys psychologically. They don't know what actually works because what they're told and what they observe are completely opposite. So single men stopped trying to figure it out. They opted out. They're not angry anymore. They're just done. And the catastrophic part is how rarely the contributing factors get acknowledged. The blame falls on men for not approaching, for being intimidated by strong women, for playing video games instead of pursuing relationships. But the behavioral patterns that created this rarely get examined. The 157-point checklist that eliminates 97% of single men before conversation, one rarely gets questioned. The addiction to validation that makes sustained satisfaction nearly impossible rarely gets addressed. The testing patterns that destroy the exact traits being selected for rarely get recognized. Accountability in modern dating dynamics is remarkably one-sided. Every failure is his fault. He wasn't tall enough. He wasn't confident enough. He wasn't ambitious enough. Rarely does the analysis include unrealistic standards, problematic behavior patterns, or choices that created predictable outcomes. And this lack of systemic reflection is why the crisis will keep getting worse. Because the only way to fix a system is to acknowledge what's broken. Without that acknowledgement, millions more single men will disappear. They'll stop approaching, stop dating, stop trying to decode the impossible puzzle of modern female attraction. And the question of where all the good men went will keep coming, while the good men who show interest keep getting rejected. Let me show you what the endgame looks like, because we're not speculating anymore. We have data. Japan is 15 years ahead of us on this curve. 40% of Japanese men in their 30s have never had a girlfriend. They're called herbivore men. They've completely opted out. South Korea calls them Sampo generation. Italy sees 70% of men under 35 living with parents. The pattern is global and accelerating. American single men are following the same path, with male virginity rates tripling since 2008. And the response to male suffering has often been mockery, male tears, incel, can't get laid. Every expression of male struggle becomes a punchline, which proves the point more effectively than any argument could. Male suffering isn't taken seriously. It's viewed through the lens of what men can provide, rather than their actual human experience. Watch what happens when single men stop providing attention, validation, free dinners, emotional labor, and commitment. The response shifts to frustration. Where have all the good men gone? Why won't men approach anymore? Why are men so intimidated by successful women? The questions all assume the problem is male failure. Rarely is it attributed to behavioral patterns, choice architecture, or the system that emerged from optimizing individual outcomes without considering collective consequences. And that absence of systemic analysis is exactly why millions more single men will vanish. The psychology behind this is actually fascinating because it reveals something profound about how male motivation works. Men don't need equality, they need possibility. Your grandfather didn't need a guarantee of success. He needed a legitimate chance. If he worked hard, stayed loyal, built something, he could get a good woman, raise a family, have a life that meant something. That deal is completely dead for modern single men. You can do everything right and still end up with nothing. You can lift weights, build a career, develop your personality, approach with confidence, and still get rejected 95 times out of 100. Because average standards have inflated beyond what's statistically achievable for most men. When the average expectation centers on the top 10% of men, basic math reveals the problem. 90% of single men can't meet that threshold, so they stop playing a game they can't win. And this is where the systemic failure becomes undeniable, because the standards aren't based on compatibility or partnership potential. They're based on what gets seen on social media. Your friend dates a guy who's 6'2", with abs and a six-figure income. Now that becomes the baseline. It doesn't matter that statistically only 3% of men meet that criteria. It looks achievable because someone else got it. This is intersexual competition destroying the dating market. Women competing with each other by proxy through the men they can attract. The single men become objects in a status game. The selection isn't based on partnership quality, it's based on whether dating him raises perceived value relative to other women. And the second he stops providing status elevation, he's disposable. This is why good men get left for better men constantly. Hypergamy doesn't stop at good enough. It only stops when better options become inaccessible, which with dating apps means it never stops. So single men are making a rational choice. They're refusing to participate in a system where they're disposable objects in someone else's status competition. They're rejecting a market where the effort required vastly exceeds any possible reward. They're walking away from dynamics that treat them as utilities rather than human beings. And this gets labeled male failure. The irony is remarkable. Here's what often gets missed about the single men disappearing. These aren't broken men. They're not losers who can't compete. Many of them are smart, capable, emotionally healthy men who've simply done the math. They've realized that modern dating dynamics offer incredibly little while demanding incredibly much. Cooperation without appreciation, commitment without loyalty, resources without respect, performance without partnership. The deal is so unbalanced that opting out becomes the rational choice. And once enough men opt out, the system collapses completely, because inflated standards only work when men keep participating. When men stop approaching, stop trying, stop caring, the leverage disappears. What's left is standards and social media validation and eventual cats. The growing panic about where all the good men went reflects this realization beginning. The men didn't go anywhere. They're right there. They just got rejected so consistently that they stopped offering themselves. The tragedy is, this didn't have to happen. If reasonable standards had been maintained, if character got valued over height, if loyalty got rewarded instead of tested, if accountability had been mutual, none of this occurs. Single men would still be pursuing. The dating market would still function. But the optimization for short-term validation and high-value access destroyed the system in the process. And now millions of single men are gone. Not physically, but psychologically, emotionally, romantically gone. They've checked out of a game rigged against them. They've stopped pursuing women who view them as inadequate. They've rejected a culture that pathologizes their nature while demanding their performance. And they're not coming back. No amount of shaming will work. No amount of think pieces will change anything, because the lesson has been learned. You're not wanted. You're not valued. You're not worth their time. So they've made themselves unavailable. Permanently. The average woman in her early 30s, who spent her 20s chasing unavailable high-value men, suddenly realizes all the good guys are taken or gone. The men who would have built a life with her aren't interested anymore. She reaches out to guys she rejected years ago and discovers they don't care. They're not angry, they're just indifferent. She's been replaced by peace, by hobbies, by purpose that doesn't require female approval. And that's the brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. Female behavior patterns are largely to blame. Not through malice, not through conspiracy, but through choices that inevitably led here, through inflating standards beyond sustainability, through prioritizing validation over relationships, through testing and destroying the men who actually cared, through avoiding accountability at every step. The single men vanishing from society are responding rationally to the incentive structures they face. They're not the problem, they're the symptom. And until the behavioral patterns that created this crisis get acknowledged and addressed, millions more men will disappear, quietly, permanently, and completely reasonably.